Today we're discussing, is it ADHD or am I just ethnic?
It's both.
Perché non lo stas? Hi, I'm Anushka,
And I'm Saika.
and welcome to Girls at ADHD.
We're two ADHD therapists with ADHD here to help you laugh, rant, cry, and unmask your way through adulting with ADHD.
This season, we're back with more unhinged moments.
Except now with guests.
So buckle up, hit play at 2 times speed.
And come spiral with us as we make sense of our beautifully chaotic brains together.
This is actually one of the questions I get asked constantly by clients. Is it just ADHD or am I ethnic? Am I just brown? Is this just being South Asian? Isn't this just being like from a Greek background? And like, it doesn't matter what ethnic background it is. Like, if you are European, Asian, somewhere from that is not Western culture, it's just like, is this not just us? Because, it's said with a laugh and I think underneath the joke, there's a lot of uncertainty and honestly a little bit of self doubt because a lot of us grew up in cultures where everyone talks at once. Emotions are expressed loudly and dramatically. Personal space and boundaries are different. Time is flexible. Multitasking is normal. And chaos, well, it's familiar, right? So people start questioning themselves, is this actually ADHD or is it just my culture?
Yeah, you just described my entire childhood and upbringing. So that's great.
100%. It's what happens when I go home at the moment. Everyone just talks over each other. I don't think anyone knows what's going on.
Everyone talks over each other, but I feel like that was normalized before. But now, after I got distanced from my family and then I went back to them, now it's just so overstimulating. And I never realized that. I just thought I was crazy and I don't know, something was going on.
It's so true. Do your parents do the thing where like your dad will try to tell you something and your tries to tell you something, but they're different things and they try to tell you at the same time?
I have had, I kid you not, they're having two conversations at each other, but they're talking about completely different things. But they're both pissed off and they're both angry, but they're angry about different things. And I'm like, how is this not comprehending into anyone's brain?
Oh God, 100%. No, I feel that in my bones.
I just got triggered. I'm so sorry. um yeah, but I guess the most important thing here to understand is culture shapes how traits show up, whereas ADHD explains why they show up. Um, so things like like your culture influences your communication styles, how you express emotions, family roles, expectations around responsibilities, and maturity. Whereas ADHD is about more neurodevelopmental patterns like how you regulate your attention, your executive functioning, your emotional regulation skills, but also your impulse control and time perception. And those patterns, I guess, show up across contexts and across time, not just at family gatherings.
And I think, being therapists who run a culturally responsive practice, one of the things that we talk a lot about with our clients is about coming from collectivistic versus individualistic cultures. And I want to touch on collectivism a little bit more. So, in many collectivistic cultures, children are raised inside tight family systems. So, if you're coming from a South Asian background, European background, Middle Eastern background, this is how we're raised, right? There's often early responsibility, there's parentification, there's a strong respect for hierarchies, there's high expectations for us to be the good child or to be good. And so ADHD doesn't actually show up as disruption in these spaces. It shows up as like internalized chaos, overthinking, hyper responsibility, people pleasing, fear of making mistakes. And oftentimes our like ADHD is helpful for us in these chaotic situations because we're able to tune things out that we don't need to be taking in. We are like, hyper fixated on particular things. We can do multiple tasks at the same time. And the chaos kind of just blends in with our like family and culture as well, right? And I think that's also why there's such a like low diagnosis as well of people from like minority backgrounds, because you only start noticing that these things feel like quote unquote a problem when you become older and you leave home and you're like living outside of that space. The other thing that happens in collectivistic cultures is we look out for each other. So when we're at home, things are usually done for us, or we do it together. Like your mum will cook your dinner, like someone will like put the washing away, blah, blah, blah. Things we support each other. So we don't notice these executive dysfunction as much. But yeah, if we look back at like, some of the other things that I was talking about, like the people pleasing and the hyper responsibility, things that you learn as a child is that I can't fall apart because too much depends on me. And so our symptoms go kind of underground.
And especially if you were raised as a woman, right? In cultures where they see like traditional roles of male and female people, and you just know that you as a woman have to do everything, or you, as you said, don't have time to fall apart because if you're not there, everyone crumbles.
100%.
That's something, it's funny because this is the exact thing I was trying to explain to my psychiatrist when he was like diagnosing me, because he was like trying to understand what my childhood was like. And like, how in therapy training, how there's like a certain aspect where you're talking about how to deal with children and adolescents and how to deal with
Yeah.
adults, and they talk about like the developmental patterns of children and
Yeah.
adolescents. So I was trying to explain to this white psychiatrist that I felt like I didn't have an opportunity to be a child, and I feel like the expectations of like being a woman was set on to me very quickly. And he was just like, what do you mean you weren't allowed to be a child? And I was like, I'm telling you that wasn't the case. And we had a 5-minute argument. Like, I swear to God, I was arguing with him, going like, I am telling you this is my experience. And he's like, no, absolutely not. But like, at the end of the appointment he did apologize for it. But
Okay, and this, guys, is why culturally responsive practice is really important. I'm going to pitch like a little PD at the end. And if you are a therapist and you have not done culturally responsive training yet in supporting neurodivergent individuals, please come and see us.
yeah, because like it is important that you're asking questions to actually think about these nuances and bring out these nuances from your client. Like, I was able to fight for it because I'm a therapist, but if someone who
Yeah.
doesn't have an understanding of that, they wouldn't be asking.
Yeah. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Exactly. Yeah, I guess another thing to think about is in terms of like migration, like the just the whole process of migration. So,
Oh, yeah.
um, a lot of people from different cultures, they migrate to say like a Western country or whatever, and migration actually changes everything. So, when people are migrating, especially if you're like first generation migrants, a lot of it a lot of the focus is on survival, so financial stability, language barriers, protecting yourself from racism, and safety. Like my dad said, when we moved here in 1996, people used to like throw rocks at us as we came back from school. I think that's
I feel
intense.
like that's where your focus is going to be, right?
That is so intense, but kudos to him because I don't remember that.
No, but like it's also like such like that's so telling, right? Like this is a reason where when we're like, neurodivergence isn't recognized. It's not because your parents don't care. Like survival comes first. Like what are you going to deal with? Oh, my kid's a bit hyperactive versus oh shit, someone's throwing rocks at my child, like priorities.
Priorities. But yeah, that's why neurodivergent often isn't recognized. And it could also be actually because of the neurodivergent, they're really good at these crisis situations. So maybe
Yeah.
that's why it's not actually a problem for them. Maybe the neurodivergence actually help them, which I never thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this a lot, and I think about like, I mean, it's my own like little like conspiracy theories in my head around like where does ADHD come from? It's a genetic thing. At which point did our survival instincts need all of these things, like all of the traits that we see in ADHD as a survival mechanism? And I mean, it as a migrant who has ADHD, it does serve us a lot. We are really good at like all of the positives that come with ADHD. We're good at all of those things. It means, and I think it serves us in a lot of different ways. I also wonder if like, how much of culture is based on, I mean, culture is based on people, right? And then people have their own traits. So how much of our culture is based on the fact that maybe like a lot of South Asians are just neurodivergent because
Maybe.
we are, and then our community is built around that, and then the culture is built around that. It's just really interesting.
Are we all neurodivergent or are we all traumatized by colonialism? We don't know.
Yeah. Oh, did the neurodivergence come up because we were traumatized? Who knows?
Who knows? And for those who are wondering, who don't get that joke, is because ADHD symptoms are very close to post traumatic stress disorder. So
Yeah. Very, very close.
that's the joke.
Thank you for explaining it, Saika. We love a play by play.
um, but yeah, I guess as you said, in many communities, ADHD wasn't a concept. Mental health is also still stigmatized, less than before, I think, but still quite stigmatized.
Yeah.
So struggle was actually normalized. Like it's better to stay quiet and be the model minority rather than actually understand your brain and advocate for yourself because it did come with actual consequences.
Absolutely. And I think, things like, the daydreaming, the forgetfulness, or emotional overwhelm, the difficulty with organizations, these things can go under the radar very quickly if you're seen, quote unquote, as like a good child or like, you're doing everything else right. But, like in the worst case scenario, you were kind of just seen as lazy or disrespectful or careless. And even then, it's like, oh, well, she's a bit impulsive. She's just a bit talkative. It doesn't matter. It's not seen as like a nervous system difference. It's not seen as like a neurological difference. It's just like you're you're just doing this thing because there's no time for understanding it. There's no concept. There's no language, right? And I think culturally, the other thing that comes up a lot is language respect and not listening. So this one comes up a lot in therapy with my clients, I think. And I think in many cultures, eye contact, posture, and stillness are equated with respect. So when an ADHD child looks away or fidgets or interrupts or zones out, it's not seen as inattentiveness. It's just seen as like rudeness. I don't know how many kids were told, like, oh, you're just not paying attention enough. You're not listening to us. You're being rude. You're talking back. And I think,
I 100% with the rudeness and the talking back. That is me.
yes. And you're just like, no, I'm just giving an explanation. You asked me a question. I answered.
It's not logical what you're saying. Make it make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. We internalize this, right? We internalize it as a child into adulthood as like something is wrong with me, not my brain works differently.
And then another thing, I guess another cultural piece that we don't talk about enough is that in many cultures, difficulty is moralized. So
Yeah.
by that, I mean, so instead of asking, what support does this person need? The question becomes, why can't you just do better? Just be better.
It's so true.
Yeah. And so that's when your ADHD behaviors get labeled as careless, weak, selfish, dramatic, and all so many great things. And then that leads to things like the chronic shame and the fear of always being a burden. And that
Yeah.
also increases your reluctance for asking for help because every time you're asking for help, an adult goes, you're just making excuses and you're not doing
Yeah.
better and you should be better rather than actually help you through it.
And then you start asking yourself, am I making excuses? Maybe I am lazy. Oh my God, why can't I just do more? And like, I think coming back to like coming from different cultural backgrounds, but also being a migrant, we're taught to hustle. So like if you're already hyperactive, then you're taught to hustle culture because you have to push through. And you for whatever reason can't do a thing that day. You end up like in ADHD paralysis. You do think you're useless. You're like, I should be doing more.
You do think you're useless, but also it's like they had to do the hustling, they had to survive. And also it's like it does sound ridiculous if you talk to them. Like I was talking to my dad that day and he was telling me about like the whole genocide that happened in Bangladesh.
Mm.
And he like grew up in that and he saw his neighbors like die and burn. And he went through that, so I understand why he believes in like I have to hustle to make it happen. And it does kind of sound ridiculous when I go to him and I'm like, "Oh, I have food, home and shelter, and I can't get up from my bed."
Yeah, 100%, because context matters, and they're coming from a place of like, and it's like, I think culturally it's that concept of like eternal gratitude, right? Like we have to be grateful for everything, but it's also like context matters as well. Like yes, during your time, those were the struggles, and I can understand from your perspective why things would seem like it's a lot easier for us. And we're going to feel the same way about, like, I reckon 100% I'm going to feel the same way about my kids. I'm going to be like, kids these. I do it already with Gen Zers sometimes. I'm like, fuck, they just don't get it. Like, back in my day.
Yeah, I feel that too sometimes.
So I guess, like, all in all, the real question underneath the joke, when someone asks, is it ADHD or am I just ethnic? They're often really asking, am I allowed to name this? Am I allowed to need support? Or should I just keep pushing through? Because many of us were taught that rest, softness, and support were privileges, not rights.
Yeah. And being ethnic doesn't cause your ADHD. I want to make that clear as well. But it may have taught you how to hide it. It may have taught you how to normalize exhaustion, frame struggle as weakness, made masking feel necessary for safety. ADHD isn't about being too much, it's about a nervous system that developed inside a world and a culture that didn't have language for it.
So if you're wondering, is this me or is it my culture? The right answer might be it's ADHD and I learned how to survive without the support that I needed. And you deserve care for both. This is also my reminder that if you are a practitioner who is working in the mental health field and you haven't done any formal training around culturally responsive practice and working with ADHDs and understanding the nuances and the difficulties that come with supporting clients, and all of this, everything that we've spoken about today and more, go out and do some professional development around it, learn about it, speak to your peers. In fact, follow our page. I'll be running a ADHD and culture workshop, professional development, over 2 days. The first day covers ADHD assessment and how to be culturally responsive in that. And then the second day covers culturally responsive intervention. And we go through all the practical strategies, things to consider, and how to support your clients from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds and culturally and racially marginalized backgrounds better. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be happening in April, May 2026.
I hope that was helpful. And I hope this also helps you fight with your psychiatrist if they don't get these things and you can advocate for yourself. Yeah, you're not going crazy. This is all real. Like, yeah. Okay, bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening.
And remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Girls That ADHD for more ADHD realness, to ask us questions, or slide into our DMs with episode ideas.
And sign up to our newsletter at girlsthatadhd.com to stay updated on new episodes, toolkits, workshops, and book in ADHD coaching if you're ready to work with your brain, not against it.
And if you found this episode useful, leave us a quick review because it really does help us reach more ADHDers and help them find us in the chaos.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye!